The silent SOS. The control room of Earth's Space Command was unusually quiet for a Friday night. The officers on duty were sipping coffee and watching over the usual hum of deep space monitoring systems. Commander Rachel Stevens leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the endless streams of data scrolling on her screen. Space was vast, but tonight, it seemed oddly silent. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the stillness. A red light flashed on Rachel's console. Her heart skipped a beat. It was an emergency signal, something Earth hadn't received in over a decade. The room immediately came alive, officers rushing to their stations. "What's the source?" Rachel barked, her voice sharp and commanding. "Unknown, ma'am," replied a young technician, fingers flying over his keyboard. "The signal is old, very old, and heavily distorted." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Hatch it through." The room fell silent again as the audio played. The static was overwhelming. But beneath it, a voice emerged. It was faint, trembling, and desperate. "This is Observation Fleet. We are under attack. They're watching. Do not return." The message cut off abruptly, leaving only static. Rachel exchanged uneasy glances with her team. The Observation Fleet. Every member of Space Command knew the name. It was a group of advanced ships sent 20 years ago to monitor alien activity in a distant star system. Their mission was classified, their existence known only to a few. But the fleet had gone silent 15 years ago, presumed lost. This broadcast was the first sign of life from them since their disappearance. "Is this a prank?" asked Lieutenant Carter, breaking the silence. He was new, young, and skeptical. The fleet's been gone for years. This could be some random signal bouncing through space. Rachel shook her head. "No, that's a military frequency, and it's encrypted. This is real." The technician spoke up again. "I've tried to clean up the signal, but it's too degraded. However, the timestamp suggests this was sent recently, within the last 48 hours. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "What's the origin point?" "It's coming from Sector 43G, the technician replied, his voice trembling. "That's where the fleet was last stationed." The room grew even colder. Sector 43G was an uncharted, remote part of the galaxy, far beyond Earth's usual patrol zones. The area was notorious for strange phenomena and unexplained disappearances. The fleet's mission there was shrouded in secrecy, but rumors had spread. Whispers of alien civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Rachel stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Alert the Admiral. We need clearance to investigate immediately." Before anyone could respond, the signal flared up again. This time, it was louder, clearer, as if whoever, or whatever, was sending it was growing desperate. "Do not let them follow. End us all." Then, silence. The signal was gone. The weight of the words hung in the air. Rachel felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What had the fleet encountered? And what did "end us all" mean? She could see the same questions reflected in her team's faces. "Get me all the records we have on the Observation Fleet," Rachel ordered. "I want to know everything. Crew members, mission logs, anything that might explain this." As the team scrambled to comply, Rachel stared at the empty void displayed on the main screen. Somewhere out there, in the cold, dark expanse of space, something was waiting. She didn't know if it was a cry for help or a warning to stay away. But one thing was clear. The past wasn't as buried as everyone believed. The technician broke the silence again. "Ma'am, there's something else. The signal, it wasn't just a broadcast. It had a coded attachment." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Decoded. Now, it'll take some time, but I'll." The technician's voice faltered, his screen flashing with unfamiliar symbols. "Wait, it's already decrypting itself." "That's impossible." Rachel leaned over his shoulder, watching as the symbols arranged themselves into lines of text. The words were short, fragmented, but enough to send a chill through her entire body. They are here, watching, learning. Run. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rachel straightened, her expression grim. Prepare a reconnaissance mission. If this is real, we need answers. If it's not, we need to know who's playing games with us. The team nodded, but the fear in their eyes was unmistakable. The observation fleet had vanished in Sector 43G, a place that many believed was cursed. Now, years later, their final broadcast had resurfaced, carrying a message of terror. Rachel clenched her fists. Whatever was out there, humanity would face it. They had to, because if they didn't, the warning from the fleet might become Earth's fate. May God help us, she muttered under her breath, staring at the screen one last time. The void stared back, silent and unfeeling, uncovering the fleet's mission. In the dimly lit archives of Space Command, the hum of ancient data servers echoed like whispers of forgotten stories. Commander Rachel Stevens stood before a holographic display, her face illuminated by the faint blue glow. The observation fleet's records had been classified so tightly that accessing them felt like cracking a safe buried in time. "Commander, I've pulled what I can," said Specialist Avery, a pale, wiry officer with an aptitude for digging up secrets. "But a lot of this data is fragmented, almost like someone didn't want it found." "Show me what you've got," Rachel replied, crossing her arms. Avery tapped a console, and a detailed schematic of the observation fleet appeared. It was an impressive assembly of 5 ships, each equipped with state-of-the-art stealth technology. They were designed not for combat, but for covert surveillance, silent observers of the galaxy's most dangerous mysteries. They were sent to Sector 43G with one objective: to monitor a newly discovered civilization, Avery explained. Initial reports described the species as advanced but peaceful. They were considered a potential ally, or a threat, depending on how things went. Rachel frowned. What went wrong? Avery hesitated before continuing. "There's more. I found an internal memo from Dr. Talia Grant, the fleet's chief xenologist. She was one of the brightest minds in alien studies, but she also had a reputation for being outspoken." A hologram shifted, displaying an audio log. Rachel gestured for Avery to play it. The room filled with the calm yet urgent voice of Dr. Grant. "This is Dr. Talia Grant, recording for fleet leadership. I need to voice my concerns about the mission. We're venturing into uncharted territory to study a civilization we barely understand. They're evolving faster than any species we've encountered, and their technology surpasses ours in ways we can't yet measure. I fear our presence might not go unnoticed or welcomed. This mission is reckless. If we make the wrong move, we could provoke something far beyond our control." The recording ended abruptly, leaving an uneasy silence. "Did anyone listen to her?" Rachel asked, already knowing the answer. Avery shook his head. Her warnings were dismissed. The fleet proceeded with its mission, and not long after, well, you know the rest. They vanished. Rachel stared at the hologram, the weight of the story pressing down on her. What about the aliens? Do we have any data on them? Avery tapped again, and an abstract image appeared. A swirling, crystalline structure that seemed more like an artwork than a life form. "This is the only visual we have." The species communicated through complex light patterns, almost like a form of biological coding. Dr. Grant called them the luminary. She believed they weren't just intelligent, they were learning from everything around them, adapting at an exponential rate. Rachel felt a cold dread creep over her, learning from everything, including us. "Exactly," Avery said. "If the fleet's stealth tech failed, the luminary might have dissected their methods, their tools, even their thoughts. It's possible that every step the fleet took only made the luminary stronger." A sudden beep interrupted them. Rachel's communicator flared to life. "Commander, you need to see this," came the voice of Lieutenant Carter from the control room. "We've detected a signal from Sector 43G. It's faint, but it matches the observation fleet's signature. Rachel and Avery exchanged a glance. "We're on our way," Rachel said, already moving. Back in the control room, the atmosphere was tense. The signal pulsed faintly on the main screen, a rhythmic beep like a dying heart. Carter pointed at the display. "It's coming from the edge of the sector. A single ship, heavily damaged but still broadcasting." Rachel leaned closer. "Can you identify it?" Carter nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It's the Solace, one of the fleet's reconnaissance vessels. It was listed as destroyed 15 years ago." Rachel's mind raced. If the Solace had survived, it might hold answers, logs, data, maybe even survivors. But the signal's origin made her uneasy. It wasn't just in Sector 43G. It was dangerously close to a region marked as the Silent Zone, an area where no signals, not even natural ones, were supposed to exist. "Prepare a remote probe," Rachel ordered. "We're not sending a crew until we know what we're dealing with." As the team worked to launch the probe, the signal from the Solace grew stronger. For a moment, it almost seemed deliberate, as if it knew they were watching. Rachel clenched her jaw. Dr. Grant's words echoed in her mind. "If we make the wrong move, we could provoke something far beyond our control." The probe launched, hurtling toward the coordinates. The room watched in tense silence as its cameras activated, displaying a grainy feed of the distant vessel. The Solace appeared on the screen, its once pristine hull now scarred and blackened. It drifted aimlessly, surrounded by faint debris that sparkled like dust in the starlight. "Zoom in," Rachel ordered. As the image sharpened, the bridge of the Solace came into view. The windows were dark, but movement inside caught everyone's attention. Something, or someone, was still aboard. The room erupted in murmurs, but Rachel's voice cut through. "Silence. Focus." The probe's systems pinged again, sending back a data packet from the Solace. It contained a single line of text. "They learned too much. Now it's your turn." The words hung in the air like a curse. Rachel felt the same chill she'd felt when the first signal arrived. This was no rescue mission. It was a warning that might already be too late. A survivor's tale. The hangar was bathed in sterile light as the rescue shuttle touched down. Its hull bore the scars of its journey through the Silent Zone, streaked with black from unknown debris. The air was tense as Commander Rachel Stevens and her team waited for the shuttle doors to open. Whatever they had retrieved from the derelict Solace wasn't just data. It was alive. The hiss of decompressing air broke the silence, and the shuttle's ramp descended slowly. Two medics stepped out, supporting a figure between them. Commander Harris, the last known member of the observation fleet, looked barely human. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and his uniform hung loosely on his skeletal frame. He muttered incoherently, his voice a low rasp. "Get him to the medical bay," Rachel ordered, her voice steady despite the unease gripping her. She followed as the medics wheeled Harris away on a stretcher. In the sterile glow of the medical bay, Harris lay strapped to a bed, his vitals erratic. The doctors worked in silence, scanning his body for signs of damage. Rachel stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed. "Can he speak?" she asked. The lead doctor shook her head. "He's weak, severely dehydrated, and showing signs of extreme psychological trauma. Whatever he's been through, it's a miracle he's still alive." Rachel frowned. "Keep me updated. The moment he's lucid, I need answers." As she turned to leave, Harris's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His eyes snapped open, wild and bloodshot. "They're here," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've always been here." Rachel froze. "Who's here, Commander?" "The Watchers," Harris said, his voice trembling. "The Luminary. We thought we were observing them, but they were observing us. Every step, every scan, we were feeding them." The medics tried to calm him, but Harris gripped Rachel's wrist tighter. His words came faster, tumbling out in a frantic rush. We tried to run. We split the fleet, sent decoys, but it didn't matter. They saw through it all. They don't think like us. They don't move like us. They adapt. Rachel's mind raced. What do you mean, adapt? They learned from us, Harris said, his voice breaking. Our ships, our systems, even our thoughts. They tore apart the Solace while I hid in the maintenance bay. I watched them. They're not machines, not flesh. There's something in between. And they're patient. So patient. Harris suddenly convulsed, his body arching off the bed. The doctors rushed in, injecting him with a sedative. Within seconds, he went limp, his breathing shallow but steady. Rachel stepped back, her mind reeling. Harris's words painted a picture of a species far more dangerous than Earth had ever imagined. The Luminary weren't just intelligent. They were predators, and humanity was their prey. Later in the briefing room, Rachel shared Harris's account with her senior officers. The mood was grim. If what Harris says is true, then the Luminary have been watching us this entire time, Lieutenant Carter said, his voice filled with disbelief. How is that even possible? Dr. Avery, the specialist who had uncovered the fleet's records, leaned forward. It's possible because we underestimated them. From the moment the observation fleet entered their territory, they were studying us. We were arrogant enough to think we could observe without being noticed. Rachel tapped a finger against the table. Harris mentioned decoys. What happened to the rest of the fleet? Avery shook his head. We don't know. The Solace was the only ship broadcasting a signal. The rest might have been destroyed, or worse. Worse? Carter asked, raising an eyebrow. Avery hesitated before answering. If the Luminary learned from our technology, they might have taken the other ships intact. They could be using them against us. The room fell silent. The idea of Earth's most advanced ships being turned into weapons for an alien species was chilling. Rachel broke the silence. We need to know more. Harris mentioned that the Luminary don't move like us, don't think like us. We need to understand how they operate if we're going to have any chance of defending ourselves. Avery nodded. The Solace's systems are still intact. If we can extract its data logs, we might find answers. Rachel stood, her decision made. Then that's our next move. I want a full analysis of the Solace, and I want every scrap of information Harris can give us. We're in the dark, and it's time we turned on the lights. Back in the medical bay, Harris stirred in his sleep, his lips moving silently. The monitors around him beeped steadily, but the doctors didn't notice the faint flicker in the corner of the room. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a shift in the shadows, a ripple in the air. If anyone had been watching, they might have seen it. A faint glow, like liquid crystal, spreading across the wall. It pulsed gently, almost curiously, before disappearing into the sterile white surface. Harris's eyes shot open, filled with terror. They're here, he whispered, but no one was there to hear him. The truth about the aliens. The hangar was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery as engineers and scientists surrounded the Solace. The derelict ship loomed like a ghost from another era, its blackened hull scarred by encounters with something far beyond Earth's comprehension. Inside the bridge of the Solace, Commander Rachel Stevens and Dr. Avery worked side by side, sifting through the vessel's data logs. We're lucky this ship even made it back, Rachel muttered, her fingers tapping a console. The logs were fragmented, corrupted by years of neglect and whatever had attacked the ship. How long until we can get something useful? Avery adjusted his glasses, squinting at the holographic interface. It's not just damage, it's interference. Something encrypted these files in a way I've never seen before. It's like they rewrote the ship's own systems as part of the attack. Rachel's brow furrowed. Are you saying the Luminary tampered with our tech? Not just tampered. They improved it. Avery replied grimly, pointing to a display. This isn't Earth's encryption. It's something they grafted onto our systems. Adaptive code, likely learned from analyzing our fleet. Before Rachel could respond, a breakthrough alert pinged. A data log had been decrypted. The two leaned in as a shaky video feed played on the screen. The recording showed the observation fleet's flagship, the Eclipse, drifting in Sector 43G. The image was unstable, cutting in and out as if the camera itself was struggling to stay functional. Voices echoed through the feed. "This is Captain Alvarez of the Eclipse," a voice said, steady but laced with tension. "We have encountered the luminary in what we thought was neutral space. They don't see us as intruders. They see us as a resource." The video shifted to an external view of the luminary. The creatures weren't machines or biological entities in the conventional sense. They were crystalline forms, each fragment glowing with a pulsating light. They moved fluidly, reshaping themselves in midair as if the laws of physics were mere suggestions. "They disassembled one of our ships in under an hour," Alvarez continued, his voice trembling now. "Not with weapons, but with precision. They learned every detail, our stealth systems, our communication protocols, even our engine schematics. We were feeding them with every second we stayed." The video ended abruptly, leaving Rachel and Avery in stunned silence. "What did we do?" Rachel whispered, staring at the now dark screen. "We walked straight into their hands." "It gets worse," Avery said, pulling up another decrypted file. It was a map of the sector, dotted with fleet positions and movement patterns. Red indicators showed the destruction of Earth's ships, one by one, until only the Solace remained. "They weren't hunting us randomly," Avery explained. "They knew exactly how to dismantle us, starting with our most critical assets. This wasn't an attack, it was a dissection." Rachel's jaw tightened, and they let the Solace go. "Why?" "To deliver a message," Avery replied, his voice grim. "They want us to know what they're capable of." As the team continued their analysis, another discovery sent chills through the room. Deep within the Solace's logs, a hidden subroutine activated, displaying lines of alien script. Avery worked quickly to translate it, his hands trembling as the meaning became clear. "They're watching us," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What do you mean?" Rachel demanded. Avery pointed to the display. "This isn't a simple log. It's a live feed." The holographic screen flickered, and an image appeared. Earth, as seen from the luminary's perspective. The view zoomed in, cycling through major cities, military bases, even Space Command itself. "They've been tracking us this entire time," Avery said, his voice breaking. "Every move, every signal, every piece of data we've sent. They've intercepted all of it." Rachel's stomach churned. "Why haven't they attacked yet?" "They don't need to," Avery replied, his expression hollow. "They're still learning. And when they're ready, they won't need ships or weapons to destroy us. They'll just outthink us." Back in the medical bay, Commander Harris was awake again, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting the walls to come alive. When Rachel entered, he sat up, his frail body trembling with fear. "You saw them, didn't you?" he rasped. "We did," Rachel said, sitting beside him. "But we don't understand. Why would they let you survive?" Harris laughed bitterly. "Survive? I didn't survive. I'm their messenger, just like the Solace. They left me alive so I could tell you one thing." Rachel leaned in, her pulse quickening. "What's the message?" Harris's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're not here to destroy us. They're here to see if we're worth saving. And if we're not." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The truth was clear. Humanity wasn't fighting a war. It was being tested. Rachel returned to the bridge of the Solace with renewed urgency. "We need to prepare Earth," she told Avery. "If the Luminary are testing us, we need to show them we're not just another resource to exploit." "But what if they've already decided?" Avery asked. Rachel's response was firm. "Then we fight. They might know everything about us, But there's one thing they don't understand yet. What's that? Avery asked, though he already suspected the answer. Rachel's gaze hardened. What we're willing to do to survive. The fleet's final act. The dim light in Space Command's strategy room cast long shadows across the tense faces of the gathered officers. Commander Rachel Stevens stood at the center, a holographic display of Sector 43G rotating slowly before her. The Solace's data had given them insight into the luminary, but it had also delivered a grim reality. Humanity was woefully outmatched. Rachel turned to her team, her voice cutting through the silence. The luminary dismantled the observation fleet, but they didn't destroy it outright. Why? They were studying us, Dr. Avery said, still pale from the revelations. Every tactic, every piece of tech, every mistake, they absorbed it all. Rachel nodded. Exactly. But what if that was the fleet's plan all along? A murmur rippled through the room. Lieutenant Carter frowned. Are you suggesting the fleet wanted to be captured? Not entirely, Rachel said. But think about it. The fleet was equipped with more than stealth tech. It carried Earth's most advanced countermeasures, hidden fail-safes designed to activate only in the worst scenarios. If the luminary took the fleet apart, they might have triggered something they weren't expecting. Avery's eyes lit up with sudden realization. The beacon. Rachel pointed to the hologram. The Solace's signal wasn't just a distress call. It was a lure. The fleet sacrificed itself to draw the luminary's focus and leave us with a chance to strike back. Later, in the bowels of Space Command, Rachel and Avery worked tirelessly to decode the fleet's hidden protocols. Deep within the Solace's corrupted systems, they unearthed a secret file marked Pandora Protocol. It's a multi-phase countermeasure, Avery explained, reading aloud. The fleet's mission wasn't just observation. It was also containment. If the luminary proved hostile, the fleet was authorized to deploy a last resort deterrent. Rachel's brow furrowed. Deterrent? What kind of deterrent? Avery hesitated. A self-replicating signal designed to overwhelm their neural network. Essentially, it's a virus targeting their ability to learn. If it works, it could stop them from adapting. And if it doesn't? Rachel asked. Then it accelerates their evolution, Avery admitted, his voice grim. There's no middle ground. Rachel stared at the screen, weighing the decision. Humanity was already backed into a corner. Taking no action would guarantee their defeat. Deploying the Pandora Protocol was a gamble they couldn't afford to ignore. As the preparations began to launch the protocol, an incoming message interrupted the operation. It was another broadcast from the luminary. This time, the voice was clear, unaltered, and eerily human. You misunderstand us, it said, the words slow and deliberate. We do not seek war. We seek meaning. Rachel's team froze, the room thick with tension. The luminary had never communicated directly before. Rachel stepped forward. Meaning? What kind of meaning? The voice responded without hesitation. You arrived uninvited. You observe without understanding. Now we observe you. Your survival depends not on your weapons, but on your wisdom. A cold chill swept through the room. The luminary weren't just watching. They were judging. But what was their criteria? And how much time did humanity have left? The Pandora Protocol was ready to deploy, but Rachel hesitated. The message from the luminary gnawed at her. Were they truly enemies, or was this some kind of test? She replayed Commander Harris's words in her mind. They're not here to destroy us. They're here to see if we're worth saving. Rachel turned to Avery. If we activate the protocol, we're declaring war. But if we don't, we're leaving ourselves vulnerable. Avery looked at her, his expression conflicted. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about what kind of species we want to be. In a last-ditch effort to understand their adversaries, Rachel ordered a direct transmission to the luminary. This is Commander Rachel Stevens of Earth's Space Command. We don't want war, but we won't be your prey. If you're truly watching, then tell us, "What do you want from us?" For a moment, there was no response. Then the holographic display shifted. A new image appeared, the observation fleet's final stand. The ships were surrounded by the glowing crystalline forms of the luminary, but they weren't attacking. Instead, the luminary were mimicking the fleet's formations, their movements precise and deliberate. They were learning, Avery whispered, not just about our technology. They were learning about us. The luminary's voice returned. You see only threats where there are opportunities. You wield knowledge as a weapon, not as a bridge. Show us otherwise. Rachel clenched her fists. The choice was clear now, but it was no less daunting. Humanity's future hinged not on brute force, but on proving their worth as a species. With a deep breath, she issued her final command. Activate the Pandora Protocol, but not as a weapon. Reprogram it as a signal of cooperation. If the luminary want to learn, let's show them who we are. The room erupted in a flurry of activity as the protocol was rewritten. Minutes later, the signal was sent, its frequency echoing across the void. The message wasn't one of war, but of unity. Earth's history, its struggles, its triumphs, all encoded into a single, unbroken stream. As the signal disappeared into the vastness of space, Rachel stood silent, waiting for a response. If the luminary truly sought meaning, then humanity's story was their only hope. And if not, then this was the final act of the observation fleet. The alien countermeasure. The command center was hushed, its usual hum of activity replaced by the tense quiet of anticipation. Every screen was tuned to monitor the Pandora Protocol transmission, a data stream representing Earth's collective knowledge, history, and achievements. It was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to show the luminary that humanity was more than a threat. But the silence that followed was deafening. Commander Rachel Stevens stood at the center of it all, her arms crossed, her jaw tight. The minutes stretched on like hours. Then, a single alert flashed across the main console. Incoming response, Lieutenant Carter said, his voice breaking the silence. It's from the luminary. Put it on screen, Rachel ordered. The display lit up with a dazzling array of colors and patterns, the luminary's unique form of communication. The crystalline shapes twisted and reconfigured, their movements almost hypnotic. Then the voice returned, calm yet resonant, as if it spoke directly into their minds. You have shown us much, it said. Your story is one of conflict, resilience, and contradictions. You create beauty and destruction in equal measure. Yet in this we see something we did not expect. Rachel leaned forward. And what is that? Hope, the voice replied simply. The word hung in the air, filling the room with a sense of cautious relief. But the message wasn't over. Yet, hope alone is insufficient. You must prove you are not bound to the cycles of your past. To do this, you must face what you fear most, yourselves. Before Rachel could respond, the lights in the command center flickered. A new alert blared across the consoles. Commander, multiple objects detected at the edge of the solar system, Carter shouted. It's the luminary. The main screen shifted to show the fleet of crystalline entities, their forms glimmering with light as they entered the outer boundary of Earth's defense grid. They moved in perfect unison, each motion deliberate and graceful. Despite their beauty, their presence was unnerving. Are they preparing for an attack? Avery asked, his voice tight with fear. Rachel stared at the display, her mind racing. No, she said finally. This isn't an invasion. This is the test. The luminary fleet halted just beyond the orbit of Neptune, their forms remaining eerily still. A new signal emerged, directed specifically at Space Command. It wasn't a voice this time. It was a challenge. They've sent coordinates, Carter reported. It's an asteroid field near Neptune. They're summoning us there. Summoning us? Rachel asked, her tone skeptical. Why? Avery's face went pale as he studied the data. They're recreating the conditions of the fleet's defeat. They want us to face what the observation fleet couldn't. Rachel's stomach dropped. The luminary weren't just observing humanity. They were forcing them to confront their own limits. It wasn't enough to transmit knowledge or offer cooperation. The luminary wanted action, a demonstration of humanity's ingenuity and adaptability. Rachel turned to her team. Prep the Endeavor. If they want a demonstration, we'll give them one. Hours later, the Endeavor, Earth's most advanced exploration vessel, launched from Space Command, carrying Rachel, Avery, and a hand-picked crew. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic mass of spinning rocks and shimmering debris. At its center, the luminary waited, their forms glowing like stars. As the Endeavor entered the field, the ship's sensors went haywire. The debris wasn't just moving randomly. It was responding to the Endeavor's presence, shifting to block their path. "It's a maze," Avery said, his eyes glued to the console. "They've turned the field into a living puzzle." Rachel gripped the armrest of her chair. "Can we navigate it?" "Not with conventional methods," Avery replied. "The field is adapting to every move we make. It's like playing chess against a dozen opponents who can see your strategy before you make it." Rachel's mind raced. The luminary weren't just testing their technology. They were testing their ability to think beyond it. She activated the ship's intercom. "Listen up, everyone. The luminary are challenging us to prove our adaptability. This isn't about brute force or advanced tech. It's about creativity. I want ideas, no matter how crazy they sound." The crew worked tirelessly, brainstorming unconventional solutions. Some suggested using the ship's drones to create decoys. Others proposed hacking into the luminary's signals to predict their movements. But it was Avery who had the breakthrough. "They're not just adapting to our movements. They're mirroring our logic," he explained. "If we think like them, we'll lose. But if we act unpredictably, illogically, they won't be able to keep up." Rachel nodded. "Let's test that theory." Using manual controls, Rachel guided the Endeavor through the field, making erratic, seemingly nonsensical maneuvers. At first, the debris shifted to counter them, but soon, the luminary's patterns began to falter. The field grew less coordinated, its movements slower and less precise. "They're struggling to adapt," Avery said, his voice filled with excitement. "It's working." As the Endeavor approached the center of the field, the luminary fleet began to shift. Their glowing forms moved aside, creating a clear path. A single crystalline figure emerged, larger and more intricate than the rest. It spoke directly to the ship. "You have passed the first threshold," it said, "but your true test lies ahead." Before Rachel could ask what that meant, the screen went dark, and a new set of coordinates appeared. They pointed to Earth. The luminary weren't finished. The final test would take place where it all began. Rachel's hands tightened around the controls. "Set course for home," she said. "Whatever they have planned, we'll be ready." The final broadcast. Earth's skies were a spectacle of fire and light as the luminary fleet descended. Their crystalline forms refracted sunlight into dazzling beams, painting the heavens in alien colors. The entire planet watched in awe and terror. Space Command's control room was a hive of activity, every screen showing live feeds of the alien fleet's approach. Commander Rachel Stevens stood at the helm, her face calm, but her mind racing. The luminary weren't invading, yet their presence was an undeniable statement of power. They had come to Earth to deliver the final stage of their test, and humanity's response would decide everything. "What's their position?" Rachel asked, breaking the tense silence. "Geostationary orbit above Central Africa," Lieutenant Carter replied. They're just hovering there." Rachel frowned. "No weapons detected." "None," Carter said. "But they've transmitted a new signal. It's directed at the entire planet. The signal broadcast on every device capable of receiving it. Televisions, radios, holographic displays, all showed the same message. A pulsating crystal shape and a calm, resonant voice. "You stand on the precipice of understanding," the voice said, audible in every language. "Your actions have revealed your nature, resilient, creative, and flawed. Now you must decide your place in this galaxy." The broadcast shifted to show Earth itself, a glowing sphere suspended in darkness. The voice continued, "We offer you a choice. Evolve beyond conflict, beyond self-destruction, and join us in the pursuit of meaning, or remain bound to your cycles of war and isolation." The screen flickered, and a final line appeared. "The decision is yours. But choose wisely. This moment will echo forever." In the control room, Rachel turned to Dr. Avery. "What do they mean? Choose wisely. What are we supposed to do?" Avery's fingers flew over his console, analyzing the signal. It's not just a message. It's a map. They're pointing us to something on Earth, deep in the Congo Basin." "The Congo?" Rachel asked, puzzled. "What's there?" Avery hesitated. "It's an uncharted area, heavily forested, but there are strange energy readings coming from the location they've marked. Whatever it is, they want us to find it." Rachel led a small expedition team to the site, their shuttle descending through dense jungle canopies. The air was thick with humidity and tension as the team disembarked, their equipment crackling with interference from the strange energy field. At the center of the marked location, they found a massive crystalline structure embedded in the earth. It resembled the luminary, but its surface was dormant, dull compared to their vibrant forms. The structure hummed faintly, as if alive but sleeping. "What is it?" Carter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a seed," Avery said, awe in his voice. "A piece of the luminary, planted here centuries ago. They'd been watching us far longer than we thought." Rachel approached the structure cautiously. "Why now? Why reveal this to us?" A voice echoed in her mind, soft, yet unmistakably luminary. "Because now you are ready to understand." The structure lit up, its surface shimmering with color. Data streams flowed across it, showing humanity's history, triumphs, tragedies, and everything in between. Then the images shifted, showing possibilities, a future of cooperation and prosperity, or one of destruction and despair. The voice returned, "This is your mirror. What you see is what you will become." Back in Space Command, the world's leaders debated furiously. Some saw the luminaries' actions as a challenge to humanity's independence. Others viewed it as an opportunity to learn from a civilization far beyond their own. Protests erupted, demanding answers, unity or retaliation. Rachel returned to the command center, the weight of the expedition's discovery heavy on her shoulders. "The luminary aren't here to conquer us," she said, addressing the room. "They're offering us a chance to grow, but only if we can prove we're ready." "And if we're not?" Carter asked. Rachel's gaze hardened. "Then they leave us behind, and the next species they encounter will take our place." As Earth debated its course of action, a final broadcast came from the luminary fleet. The voice was calm, yet firm. "We do not remain where we are not welcomed. We will watch from the void. When you are ready, seek us." The luminary began to ascend, their crystalline forms shimmering like falling stars in reverse. They disappeared beyond Earth's atmosphere, leaving only their seed behind, a silent reminder of their challenge. Months passed. Humanity, for once, stood at a crossroads. The world's leaders agreed to establish a global council dedicated to understanding the seed, its purpose, and what it could teach. The project became a symbol of unity, a fragile but hopeful first step toward the future the luminary had envisioned. Rachel, standing beneath the seed's faint glow in the Congo Basin, felt a cautious optimism. The luminary had tested humanity and left them with the most profound question of all. What kind of species will we become? As she turned to leave, a faint pulse of light flickered across the seed's surface, as if acknowledging her thoughts. The luminary's test wasn't over. It had only just begun.